An arrest has been made in connection with the Gilgo Beach murders.
His intent was nothing short but to murder these victims.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us.
Gilgo Beach, one of Long Island's most serene stretches of shoreline, now synonymous with the serial killings that haunted the community for 14 years.
I've been asked about the theory that it's one serial killer. Facts of the case indicate one person.
What is now very clear is that the area in and around Gilgo Beach has been used to discard human remains for some period of time.
Melissa Barthélemy one day, and then they found another body, and then another body, and then another body.
This is the man police say used Gilgo Beach as a dumping ground for his victims, 6-year-old Rex Heuermann from Massapequa Park.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families.
Heuermann is charged with 6 murders and is a suspect in a 7th. He has pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Right now, investigators are looking to link him to other cold case killings.
Every case, every person who was tragically murdered in Suffolk County, they're in play.
Now prosecutors are taking us inside the accused killer's manifesto, what they call a murder roadmap, and the details on how he tried to avoid arrest.
These young women went missing between July of 2007 and September of 2010. For the next 13 years, their cases went unsolved, until today.
After more than a decade, police make an arrest right here where I'm standing in Midtown Manhattan, July 13th, 2023.
This is surveillance video showing the moment of the arrest on a crowded city street. Hours later, we got our first look at the accused serial killer.
This is the suspect in the Gilgo Beach murder case being led to court. Sources tell Newsday his name is Rex Heuermann.
For the longest time, for 13 years, we had no idea who the suspect may be. And then last July 13, police unveiled his name, and now we had a face to go with this suspect.
As technology advanced, so did the investigation. In 2022, DNA evidence and digital forensics began to piece together the puzzle that led to Heuermann. Investigators scraped DNA from pizza crusts and stray hairs to tie the victims to him. Burner cell phone data and a 2002 Chevrolet Avalanche were also key in the investigation.
A significant break in the case was the avalanche and the fact that this guy, he was described by witnesses as an ogre. He matched the description of the ogre. It was his physical size. He's using these fictitious email addresses.
Heuermann was first identified as a suspect in Amber Lynn Costello's death in March of 2022. Investigators linked him to a pickup truck reportedly seen by a witness in 2010. According to the indictment, detectives found credit card payments and phone calls made by Heuermann in the same area where someone used burner phones to contact several of the victims before they disappeared. Detectives also said they found searches on other serial killers and sex workers, sadistic torture-related pornography, and child pornography on a burner email account investigators tied to Heuermann. A key breakthrough came in 2023.
The surveillance team had observed the pizza box and were confident that the DNA profile would be consistent with the defendant because he left that material inside the box. And so the buccal swab just erases all doubt.
Over the years, police slowly released other evidence.
For a long time, there was no news that came out of this Gilgo Beach investigation. And then Jerry Hart really cracked that open.
A significant piece of evidence found at one of the crime scenes along Ocean Parkway. A black leather belt embossed with the letters HM or WH was recovered during the initial stages of this investigation. We believe that the belt was handled by the suspect and did not belong to any of the victims.
One of Heuermann's grandfathers was William Heuermann. Investigators say Maureen Brainard Barnes was bound with the belt.
I think the way the information has come out over the years by these just kind of little bits of evidence being presented.
In 2022, Suffolk police released a video showing victim Megan Waterman in a Hop Hog hotel just before she vanished.
Based on what we know right now, we believe she did leave the hotel that night to meet her killer.
And even since the arrest, how we keep just kind of learning a little bit more of the stories that we're getting out, these little clues to how things are gonna progress, has had people even more fascinated by it. People really trying to look ahead, who's next? Is he the sole killer of all the victims at Gilgo Beach?
This is a planning document, and it was utilized by Heuermann to methodically blueprint and plan out his kills.
In June, prosecutors revealed what they called Heuermann's manifesto, details on how they say he selected, killed, and disposed of his victims.
It talks about potential DSs, which we allege are dump sites, and the dump site being Mill Road. If you look at the case, Jessica Taylor was left on Halsey Manor Road. That bisects with Mill Road, and Valerie Mack was found in the vicinity of Mill Road. The crime scenes, the similarities are there. We can certainly say at this point the defendant is a suspect in that case.
Investigators found the document during a search of Heuermann's home in March. They say he created it in the year 2000 and modified it over several years on a hard drive in the basement of his home.
The exact method by which these murders were committed in excruciating detail in that document is in some cases identical to the methodology used to murder the 6 victims.
It's a list of items that someone might need if they were to commit a killing and dispose of a body. It's a list of things not to do.
Through that planning document, it details, pre-prep stage, post-prep stage, and a lot of considerations. In one of the sections, they talk about hanging tarps and plastic. Don't use tape. Use push pins. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to see if we could find areas where we have evidence of adhesive tape or evidence of where pins are being used. We think we found some of those locations using infrared light and as well as the naked eye.
The document features a series of checklists with tasks to complete before, during, and after the killings, as well as practical lessons for next time. Among the dozens of entries written, there are reminders to clean the bodies and destroy evidence and to get sleep before hunt.
Well, that planning document also talks about be careful, don't charge gas. Be careful with regard to anything you purchase being traced back. There is an effort, we allege, through that document that shows these items that he's buying, he's specifically making sure that you can trace it back.
One section titled Things to Remember appears to highlight lessons from previous killings, prosecutors said, such as using heavier rope and limiting noise in order to maximize playtime.
There's some evidence of him, having gone back and read Newsday articles about one of the killings. He certainly seemed to be studying other serial killers, but also studying law enforcement and trying to find ways to avoid being caught. He studied books by John Douglas, a prolific serial killer profiler.
With regard to that specific book, Mindhunter, it is in that planning document. It's our allegation that the defendant was utilizing that book not to gain insight into his own conduct, but rather to see what the conduct of law enforcement is.
Rex Heuermann of Massapequa Park was back in court in Riverhead today, now charged with killing 6 women. The new charges, the 2003 murder of Jessica Taylor and the 1993 killing of Sandra Castilla. Taylor's remains were found along Ocean Parkway and Manorville. Castilla's were discovered in North Sea.
This year has been 21 years since she was taken from us, longer than the chance that she got to be alive. I can't express what this day means after waiting and hoping for answers.
You look at all of the 6 victims, so many similarities, young women who were at a tough point in their life and were really exploited. So sad stories.
Castilla was reported missing in 1993. This really expands the case because the Gilgo Four certainly were in the 2000s, but this really expanded the scope and the timeline of the investigation.
Brings the timeline all the way back to 1993. It includes dismemberment cases now. If you go through Newsday archives and look at missing person stories, remains found in the 90s, there were a lot of sex workers who went missing and disappeared. 3 other men already convicted of killing sex workers in 1993 from Long Island. You got Robert Schulman, Joel Rifkin, John Bittrolf. Now you have Rex Heuermann accused in this, and it could turn out that he's more prolific than any of them. You don't just think he killed Sandra Castilla in 1993 and then didn't kill again until 2007?
It doesn't matter what I think, it matters what I can prove. So,
what does the evidence say about that in terms of what you can say?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think I can say if this happens, if we're ready to charge, cases. And again, when we talk about, these victims, we're not confining ourselves to Gilgo Beach. We're not confining ourselves to this case. There are a lot of victims. There are a lot of families out there, and we're trying to, find as much evidence and give as much closure as we can with regard to all the cases.
The district attorney likes to give these little nuggets, hints of what might come next. So when you see, Mill Road on the document, that certainly suggests Valerie Mack. He went out of his way at the press conference to bring up Karen Vergata, so it's possible that she could be a victim.
There are still 3 unidentified victims whose remains were found along Ocean Parkway. A woman who became known as Peaches due to a tattoo on her body, her toddler daughter. There was also an Asian male found about a half a mile from the Gilgo Four.
Identifying someone is just one step in an investigation. We're working a number of different avenues of all of these investigations, and when we're prepared to act, we'll speak on it.
Rex Heuermann, a married father of 2, accused of leading a double life.
Heuermann is an architect. In fact, he founded RH Consultants and Associates back in 1994. Their office here on West 36. It's actually that number 19 you see behind me. And some of his clients include Target and Catholic charities.
He worked in New York City. The day planner that we got to see shows that even around the time that Jessica Taylor went missing, he seemed to be keeping appointments in New York City, going out and meeting on projects, jobs that he was working on.
And from all the evidence in this case, we can clearly see that this defendant, at least we allege, lived a double life. He had his public-facing life and his private life, and he was very separate, not to intermingle the two.
It just shows you. It could be your next-door neighbor and you don't know.
Heuermann lived in this run-down red home that he grew up in Massapequa Park.
People there have told me it's just been this thing. People almost sort of avoid it. They walk across the street just to stay away. Kids don't go trick-or-treating there.
Neighbors say Heuermann, his wife, and 2 kids are quiet people who keep to themselves.
He was a kind of a nerdy kind of guy, odd, but not a troublemaker, and he was soft-spoken, and we spoke regularly. I'm surprised.
There's not too much known about Heuermann's personal life. I think one thing that a lot of people are aware of is that he was a hunter. He was a big hunter. He owned many guns. Close to 300 guns were in his house. He was at the Sportsman's Club in Manorville the day before Jessica Taylor disappeared. The burlap that the women were found in, the district attorney has said that was a type of burlap used by hunters.
Heuermann's estranged wife, Asa Ellerup, filed for divorce soon after her husband was arrested. However, she is standing by him. Her attorney tells Newsday she, quote, believes he is not capable of the crimes he is accused of.
Asa, Victoria, and Christopher, whatever happens to Rex, guilt or innocence, they are collateral damage. Their lives are forever ruined.
Investigators say cheek swab samples collected from Ellerup match hair found on the remains of some of the homicide victims, but she has not been accused of wrongdoing in the case.
People are going to assume and have whatever opinions they want. The DA's office has been clear in their statements that their investigation showed she was not even present in the country when these alleged incidents happened.
Heuermann is being held without bail here at the Suffolk County Jail in Riverhead. No longer on suicide watch, he spends his days alone in his cell about 12 miles from where prosecutors say he dumped 2 of his victims.
When he first came into our custody, I personally went and spoke to him, and he said that we won't have a problem with him, and almost a year later, he's held true to his word.
Suffolk County Sheriff Errol Toulon Jr. says Heuermann is the most unique inmate he's ever had.
I've seen from John Gotti to Larry Davis to Joel Steinberg during the course of my career, and I've seen emotion out of them, but not out of this one. Hasn't showed any emotion whatsoever since he's been with us. So stoic, has not changed his demeanor, no matter what is reported against him, what occurs in court.
He spent a year locked away, but it does not seem to affect his behavior.
A person will start to see the 4 walls of their cell start to close in. You know, now he has 6 charges on him, and still the walls are not closing in, at least outwardly in his appearance and his demeanor. I don't even know if this man laughs. I don't even know if he smiles. From my perspective of just my own visits into his housing unit, never walked in where he's smiling at something and then stopped because I was there, or was watching TV and thought something was humorous.
Not allowed to interact with other inmates, he keeps busy by reading.
He likes to take books out of the law library, and he seems to be an avid reader in addition to reading the discovery regarding his case. In the last year, Mr. Heuermann has only done walks around the yard, has not even shot a basketball hoop yet.
Journalists and true crime fans have asked to visit the alleged serial killer, but the sheriff says he only has 3 regular visitors.
He does get visitors, you know, from his attorney, from his wife, and from someone else that's known to him, you know, someone he's had acquaintance with for quite some time.
Suffolk's Human Trafficking Unit, which interviewed nearly 300 incarcerated sex workers at both Nassau and Suffolk jails, have produced 15 reports mentioning encounters with Heuermann.
We feel that these 15 have credible information that we present to the task force. There were valid points on each of the 15 reports that lend us to believe that there is some credibility or some information regarding Mr. Heuermann.
The new potential leads are being investigated by the Gilgo Task Force.
New York City is so close to where he resided. It's very common that New York City sex workers would travel into Nassau County, even into Suffolk County, obviously. So we believe that if there is information to be garnered, my staff will be able to get it.
It all started back in May 2010. A desperate 911 call from an adult escort set off a massive search in Oak Beach.
State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
A woman named Shannon Gilbert, she was a sex worker. She'd been at a client's home near Gilgo Beach in that area. She called police. She said she was in danger. Police came, did not find her, but in December of that year, a Suffolk County canine officer brought his dog for training in the area to see, maybe we can find what happened to Shannon Gilbert.
At that point, I saw the skeletal remains of a body. We were quite surprised the second day when we found the second body.
We found a body at Gilgo Beach, and 2 days later, on December 13th, 3 more bodies were found.
We refer to those women whose remains were found as the Gilgo Four: Megan Waterman, Alyssa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes.
I think with the Gilgo Four, it was clear early on to law enforcement that it was the same killer because their bodies were in such close proximity. They were all disposed of in a similar way, posed in a similar way, bound, fully nude.
Ultimately, 10 sets of human remains were found. The victims were mostly young women who were involved in the sex trade. None of the bodies were Shannon Gilbert. And there was a growing outrage, frustration, and pleas from the families involved.
Please help end my pain, end their pain, and find this killer before he strikes and hurts and murders someone that you love.
I think in the beginning, when these bodies were first found, there was some fear that there was a serial killer on the loose. I think a lot of people were offended by law enforcement's description of these women as, basically they were sex workers and they put themselves in a position where they could be subjected to violence.
If it was a doctor's child, a cop's child, a nurse, I'm almost guaranteed this case would have been already solved. But because of their profession, they think that they're dirty girls, and they're not, they're still human beings.
There are countless times I needed her and she was not there. I remember she read to me every night, and now I can no longer remember the sound of her voice. I wish she was here today, but she was taken from us.
They were all beautiful women. They weren't just prostitutes, as everybody is saying. They were daughters, sisters, cousins, nieces. They're victims of an evil man.
On December 13th, 2011, it was the news no one wanted to hear. Police found the skeletal remains of Shannon Gilbert, who had disappeared 19 months earlier near Oak Beach.
That was the largest crime scene search in the department's history. Ultimately, we were able to discover the remains of 10 human bodies and finally discover Shannon Gilbert, which was the main point of our search, which how it originated.
Police believe Gilbert died from what they call accidental drowning and was not a victim of the Gilgo killer.
It doesn't matter if people think that she's a victim of the Long Island serial killer or not. Something happened to her that night. She ran for her life. She was in fear. She called 911.
Past mistakes have plagued the Gilgo Killings investigation.
Another aspect to this is just the incompetence of the Suffolk County Police Department for so many years.
There have been a number of police commissioners, at least 3 DAs who've worked in the case.
Experts say missteps early on set police back. One of the biggest may have been the decision by former Suffolk Police Chief James Burke to remove the FBI from the investigation.
This investigation was botched from the beginning. A lot of the responsibility for that falls on District Attorney Tom Spoda. Spoda was consolidating power in between his office and the Suffolk County Police Department. He did not want outside agencies involved in law enforcement in Suffolk County, and so he pushed back at the FBI. It became even a bigger problem when Jimmy Burke became the chief of police, chief of the department. This investigation kind of floundered for years, and it really didn't get back on track until Tim Sini became the police commissioner after Burke and Spoda were charged with federal crimes and tried and ultimately went to prison.
When I called and reached out to the FBI regarding them joining the task force, they were reluctant at first. They were concerned about, I guess, some past relationships where they weren't necessarily part of being inside the loop of the case. So I reassured them and said, that's something that you don't have to worry about any further.
Mr. Heuermann is not guilty.
Despite mounting evidence, Heuermann's defense attorney says his client is innocent. But Michael Brown has acknowledged his client is obviously in a bad place in terms of the new charges.
One murder is obviously horrific, and it's a difficult thing to defend. Now we're at 6. And I don't know, based on what the district attorney said, he insinuated to some extent that there may be more forthcoming.
Brown also says the murder investigation was tainted years ago by the involvement of now disgraced Suffolk Police Chief James Burke.
To some extent, I think Chief Burke was suppressing the investigation and wouldn't allow the FBI to participate. Chief Burke was in charge of this investigation. Just from the fundamental, the FBI has expertise in these types of investigations. To us, and I think to the public, it seems contrary to common sense that Chief Burke would not let the FBI in.
Burke's attorney told Newsday his client is, quote, a convenient target for the Heuermann defense team, and says no information obtained by the FBI connects Burke to any of the Gilgo Beach killings.
The Gilgo Beach murders, a crime that captivated and terrified Long Islanders for more than a decade.
Shocking. They can't be anything else but shocking.
You're always worried. Could it be someone? Who is it?
There's been a lot of an intense interest in the case, locally, nationally. Some international press has been interested in.
There's a circus-like atmosphere to this. There's a sort of carnival sideshow atmosphere to this, where now Long Island is a place that's known for serial killers, and it's gotten a lot of media attention, public attention, because of these murders.
I think people have a natural fascination with serial killers, and I think when it happens so close to home, when it happens on Long Island, those of us who grew up here, you almost can't believe it. It really does capture people's imagination.
Every single time the Gilgo case is in court, reporters and photographers know it's going to be an extremely busy day. Now, there's always a line to get into the courthouse, but when Heuermann is in court, there is also a separate line to get into the actual courtroom. There's limited seating, and none of us want to be the one that doesn't get in to see what happens. Also, outside is sort of a media circus, to put it bluntly. People get there very early, crews set up awnings and tables and chairs, and there are microphones from every station covering it, and nobody wants to miss anything. All eyes are obviously on him from the second he walks into the courtroom. Does he have a new haircut? Does he turn around and look at people in the courtroom? How many times does he turn around? Does he make eye contact? Does he have any facial expressions?
The Gilgo Beach Killings remain one of the most haunting cases in recent history. As new efforts continue to uncover the truth, there is hope for justice as the memories of the victims live on.
We're never going to stop. As long as we have investigative avenues to go down, we're never going to stop.